Sorry, Zach.
No worries. Just no pressure. It's just being recorded. Good morning. I'm Zach Parris. I'm the pastor of Lutheran Campus Ministry at the University of Colorado, and I am most blessed to be your partner here at St. Aidan's, where we support a group of students together called Bread and Belonging. I also regret to inform you that I am a Facebook user. And aside from keeping track of my family in North Carolina, keeping them up to date on what's going on in my life, and keeping track of the intimate details of the lives of people who I went to school with in 8th grade, I feel like I need to be there because there is a Facebook group of Lutheran campus ministry professionals, pastors, deacons, and priests who are engaged in this very particular work. And this is one of the only life-giving pockets of the internet that I have found. It's a place where we share ideas and best practices and encouragement. In this group, I actually enjoy reading both the posts, and you're not going to believe this, and the comments. They're both nice. Last week, one of our newest colleagues, a pastor starting their first year of ministry on campus, asked our group, how many months or years will it take before I get my feet under me and get into a groove? Any advice is appreciated. And the responses were honest and caring, even now as somehow I enter my 11th year of ministry on campus here in Boulder. I found them encouraging. But here's the wisdom that I felt compelled to share. So much of what we do only happens once a year. There's only one big fall involvement fair. There's only one spring break. There's only one retreat. It will take at least a year to become aware of all the things that you do not know. As many of you know, this is the shape of the path that wisdom often seems to take. We begin with energy, confidence, and some bravado, and it turns out some blinders. And as we learn more, those blind spots are revealed, and there's a movement towards humility as we're faced with the growing reality of all the things that we do not know. I see this movement in the lives of students. It's often their first time on this particular merry-go-round, and they often emerge out of that humility and into a renewed confidence that will most likely eventually give way to the humility of knowing the unknown, and the cycle repeats itself. I'm reminded of this rhythm of life as we prepare for a new year of ministry on campus, our second year of pandemic campus ministry. And lately, this has felt an awful lot like the beginning of the second year of campus ministry in general. Because now, 1 year later, we all know so much more. Right? We know that the virus doesn't necessarily transmit all that much via surfaces. Aerosol transmissions is a thing I didn't know about 18 months ago, but now I feel like I know a lot about it and that it's important. Right? We know that masks work. We've got a whole new set of tools. Thanks be to God, there's a vaccine. And even when we don't necessarily want to hear it, we know how to use all this information and these tools to keep people safe. And yet, I have to tell you, I am much less certain about this fall semester than I was the last. Last year, I was pretty sure that college was a bad idea. Now, I don't normally say that at the beginning of a new academic year, but last year, that's what I was thinking. You know, the idea of bringing tens of thousands of unvaccinated young adults who had been isolated, kept apart from their friends for 6 months, bringing them back to campus, to the places where they've gathered together for generations, and expecting them not to gather seemed like awful, hopeful thinking. And so when things went downhill, I was not that surprised. But this year, I got nothing. I don't know what to expect or even how I should feel. Nearly all students will be vaccinated, which that seems good. You know, that's what we're going for with the rest of the world. But the numbers that I follow pretty regularly, my little bookmarks folder, are going up. And while a month ago, I was pretty confident that we'd have a relatively normal semester, that I felt some confidence in our planning, I don't really know what to expect when things get going tomorrow. How are we to know what to expect at the beginning of another experiment of higher education in a time of global pandemic? Well, God is not averse to uncertainty. But one of the things that I find reassuring in the Bible are the rhythms and the patterns that repeat themselves. Throughout the Hebrew Bible, and especially in the Gospel of Matthew, there's this pattern that you can reliably find of homecoming and exile. The people leave Egypt, they move into exile, and eventually find their way into the Promised Land, where they are exiled again, only to return again. And the rhythm repeats itself. Jesus, in the Gospel of Matthew, is born in the city of David and immediately exiled to Egypt, but he comes back, homecoming. He lives into this routine as life and ministry bounce back and forth from the Galilean countryside to Jerusalem and back again. And Jesus is exiled in the fullest sense, right on the cross, and yet comes home into life even from death. In the Gospel of John that we read from today has its own rhythm, and it begins right away. In the first chapter, Jesus emerges from the wilderness, and John the Baptist sees the Spirit descending upon him like a dove. Later in the chapter, Jesus is calling the first disciples, and Peter goes out and recruits Nathanael. Nathanael meets Jesus and on sight says, "You are the Son of God." And Jesus promises Nathanael right before they are set to begin a new year of ministry, that you will see the heavens opened up, and you will see the angels of God ascending and descending. One of the truths that the Gospel of John reveals about the essential nature of God is that there is something about that rhythm of ascending and descending, of going up and coming down, that is essential to God's nature. Throughout the Gospel of John, you will find God going up and going down, and going down and going up and going up and going down. We are at the end of this Sunday at one of the toughest lectionary streaks in all the Revised Common Lectionary. It has a reputation among regular preachers. God help you if you're a solo priest or pastor and have to preach yourself every single week, because we've spent 5 weeks now in the 6th chapter of John, where Jesus finds a dead horse called the bread of life. It's not that dead. It's living bread. It's bread of life, okay? But Jesus and the lectionary makers in particular, they overlap the verses. There's no need for us to have 5 weeks of it. But the lectionary makers, the powers that be, they have given us, they have force-fed us bread of life for 5 weeks now. And so today, I'm not going to talk to you about bread, because I'm sure Mother Mary Kate and Pastor Steve have already done that very, very well. There's nothing left to be said. So if you could join me, let us peek behind that curtain of gluten. Because when we do, we will start to see this rhythm of the Gospel of John emerging even in the midst of all the bread. I guess, actually, I didn't think about this. You could tie in bread rising here and falling, but I'm not going to do that. We're not going to talk about bread, he said after a discourse on bread. You see, the promise that Jesus proclaims to the disciples here, even about the bread of life, is that it comes down. The bread of life came down to your ancestors. It will come down to you. It comes down from heaven to where we are. And Jesus says this in a particularly harsh way, and the disciples complain, they grumble. The Greek word is onomatopoeia here. It's gogazoi. They grumble, go, 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 go. They make those guttural noises because they're upset. And Jesus says, well, if that upsets you, if you are upset by the stuff of life, by the bread of life coming down to you, then what if you were to see God ascending? What if you were to see the angels of God ascending into the heavens? What if you were to see God going up? This back and forth, this rhythm, this pattern is in itself good news for us and for the disciples. The way of God is a way that is unpredictable, and yet there is a rhythm within it. God goes down and goes up and goes down. And the good news of the God who is all over the place is the promise that God will find us, no matter where we find ourselves. In the midst of certainty, midst of certainty and doubt, in the light and in the dark, when we're up and when we are down, the God who will not sit still, the God who will not be confined to temples or tabernacles or human sensibilities will find us. In the midst of all the bread, we don't necessarily talk about this lovely arc of stories in the Old Testament readings, in your Hebrew Bible readings, where the people tell God, we've been on the road for a long time. I bet we should build you a box. I bet you'd love to be inside of a box. And God says, actually, I've been fine. I've been with you in the wilderness. I've been with you in Egypt. I'll go with you wherever you go. You don't need to do that for me. And they're like, no, God, we insist. You must have a box to travel in. And God says, well, if that's what you need, I'm in the business of giving you what you need, so you can build me a box. And then they finally do that homecoming thing. They get into the place and they say to God, actually it's David, David's sitting up in the temple and he said, or in the castle, his palace. And David says, I have so many nice things. God, you should have a nice thing. I've got a swimming pool. You should have a swimming pool. Let's build you a big house. And God says, well, I don't actually need a house. I've been doing fine. I was with you in Egypt. I was with you in the wilderness. I was with you when you had that box that you wanted me to be in. You don't need to do this for me. And the people, David, Solomon, say, well, actually, I think it would mean a lot. It's not just for me. I think the people would like it if you had a house, if they knew where you were, if we had a little more certainty about you. And God said, well, that's not really how, I've been with you through all this uncertainty. But if you need it, we can do this. And so they build God a temple, another box for God to dwell. And the good news is the God who comes up and down does go down, comes to us in the boxes. There are some boxes, there are some tabernacles and temples in which God can be reliably found. To make your bread connection here at the table in a piece of bread, it is a place where God is reliably found. But that is not the only place in which God is found. God will not be held by our temples or tabernacles or our human conventions. Instead, the God of the gospel, the God of Jesus, goes up and down and every which way in between. I love the image of the great glass elevator in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that goes up and down and sideways and diagonals. The God that we worship is a God who will go wherever it is that we go, who will be all over the place and who will find us. That's the good news that Jesus proclaims to the disciples. And so faced with this totality, this revelation of all the things that they do not know about Jesus, the things about God that they did not know, Peter offers a powerful confession. It is a confession in the form of a question, which I love. Lord, to whom can we go? It is the refrain that I find myself muttering as we make plans for the fall. Lord, what should we do? And in the mystery of God, the answer to that question is clear and muddy. I do not know what to expect tomorrow when we haul our stuff onto campus and shop our wares with students, when we give out cups and stickers and succulents. But I do know that what awaits us will be in the shape of God. It will be in the rhythm of a God who ascends and descends. It will be in the rhythm of the God who goes with us into exile and brings us home. Be in the rhythm of the God who dances both along the edge of both life and death. This fall, we have a good plan, or the best plan we could have. Our Tuesday night student dinners with Bread and Belonging will start outside and will be catered for the first 4 weeks. And after that, we'll see if we know anything more. We'll ask, Lord, to whom can we go? We're prepared, as I said, to give away succulents, to do all of our tabling, to do fairs, just like we're pretty close to how we would do it in pre-pandemic times. And yet, who knows what to expect? All we truly know at the beginning of this new adventure is that the God who goes up and down and who goes everywhere in between will find us. That God will find you, no matter where we end up. May it be so. Amen.
Amen.